be forgiven? Do you forgive and be forgiven? In the end of all time, we will find peace of mind. Forgive and be forgiven. Forgive, be
Good. Good. Can you hear me? Of course, you could probably hear me without the microphone. Good morning, everyone, to this beautiful day, and happy Juneteenth. Today is Juneteenth. My name is Pam Wycliffe, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of this congregation. And welcome to everyone that's here. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart is a welcoming community, encouraging religious freedom, nourishing individual spiritual and ethical growth, celebrating diversity and promoting a just and sustainable world. If you'd like to learn more about this fellowship, please look at our website at uufe.org and join us after the service for potluck. We have potluck. So if you brought something, that's great. If you didn't bring something, eat anyway, because there's usually a lot of food. And if we run out, we'll all chat and drink a lot of coffee. And we'll be eating in the other room over in the gathering space. For the listening enjoyment of all, we ask that you please turn off or put on vibrate your cell phones and your pagers. And if you need hearing support, please ask for help at the sound desk back there in the back. And thank you very much. And have a good service. We will.
I'm not Judy, I'm the prelude to Judy. With an announcement about the book sale, today really is the last day they will be out. Unfortunately, we figured out that a community-wide book sale would probably not be worth the time we would put into it. So they will be packed up and sent to various places, and take advantage of cheap books, all still half price.
Good morning. I am Judy Darnell, and I'm wishing everybody here who's ever fulfilled the role of a father to have a happy day today. And my first two announcements have pretty well been covered by Pam and by Janelle, so I'll just go down to number 3. Science and Society will meet on Tuesday, the 28th at 2 o'clock in the Gathering Place to continue viewing and discussing our genes and DNA. In addition, yoga classes are held from 6 to 7 p.m. every Thursday in the Gathering Place, which is down the other way through the little hall. UU Feasters will meet this Wednesday at Maple Indian Cuisine, 127 South Main in Goshen at 11:30. So be sure to let Mary Adams know by tomorrow so that she can reserve enough places for us. Mike Darnell, chair of the pro tem of the Building and Grounds Committee, is recruiting helpers for some short-term or one-off tasks for our seasonal workday on Saturday, the 25th. That's this coming Saturday at 9 o'clock. We'll be happy to talk to you about how you can help. You can also check this month's focus for a list of tasks. If you can't make it the 25th, July 16th is the finish it up and or rain date for the cleanup. Chalice Sparks, a UU camp for all ages, will be held at Camp Friedenwald near Cassopolis from July 8th through 10th. More information, I think, is still on Ivy Island, but it's for people of all ages and not just for kids. The Worship and Arts Committee is planning a service for July 3rd that has some twists to it. First of all, they are planning a picnic. They will provide sandwiches and we can bring salads, desserts, and other side dishes. So bring your best voice because there will be singing, and mark your calendar that the service will begin at 11 o'clock rather than 10. I repeat that July 3rd service will begin at 11 o'clock. Mary Adams is still accepting donations of card tables for the neighborhood euchre games that she is organizing. So contact her if you have a table you can donate, or if you come across one at a yard sale or something, that'll be easy to pick up. And something brand new, the UU Women's Connection is hosting a summer women's retreat at Camp Renora just outside of Watervliet from August 12th through the 14th. It's a lovely retreat full of connection with nature, friends, and ourselves. So see the Women's Connection website for more information. Last week's collection of $191 will be shared with Church Community Services. This week's collection will be shared with the Habitat for Humanity. Thank you.
We ring the gong 3 times, once for those who came before us and made a place for us. Once for those who are here now. And once for those who will come after us and build on the dream. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Peter Friedrichs, and it's called We Light Our Chalice for Fathers and Fatherhood. For sleepless nights awaiting the curfew breakers, for anxious hours as a driving instructor, for hours spent on sidelines cheering and watching school plays, sometimes resting our eyes, for the pressures of breadwinning and wait till your father gets home, for teaching moments and mentoring moments, for making up answers when you just don't know, but are expected to because you know everything, for scrapes and boo-boo kisses and band-aids, for hugs and kisses and silliness and play, for bedtime stories and early morning ice time, for all the aftershave and ties received as gifts, for handing over car keys and waves goodbye, for father-daughter wedding dances and cradling grandchildren for the first time, for all the moments and all the meaning in the role of a lifetime. We light our chalice for fathers and for fatherhood. And now let us say the
Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Hi. Okay, I think UUFE is actually muted, so we can't hear you. People on Zoom can't hear UUFE. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Bree Tribbett. I'm a current member of UUFE, but I actually reside in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Although my heart and my home is still back in Elkhart. I was lucky enough to attend a church service last Sunday, and by golly, it felt weird with all the new changes our congregation has experienced over the past few years. It made me reflect on how I have grown these past few years. Last week, Chuck talked about resiliency and how we can overcome anything if we are adaptable and welcoming to change. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like life has recently dragged me through the mud by my toes. My Nana passed away unexpectedly in March, and everyone keeps saying, find a silver lining, find a silver lining. With all the added negativity and added stressors in the media and everyday life, find a silver lining where? I often ask myself. Life gets hard. But as Chuck was talking, I was looking around the room and saw many faces that probably had seen the same adversity. Why do I often think that I'm alone in my struggle? I am sure we have all felt this way at some point, but our power and healing lies in our ability to be vulnerable with the people that we cherish. Our congregation has been put through the ringer recently, yet we still manage to graciously get through it. We have had all of our struggles, but we are still managing to show up for one another. Thank you so much for being present with us today, and thank you to UUFE for being my spiritual home.
Grow. I'll try to stand on my toes for this whole time. I don't want to break the mic. I'm Janelle Crump, and this is the time in our service when we share. You can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay, try to maintain this balance here. Okay. This is the time in our service, about once or twice a month is what we did in the past, when we share with each other what is on our hearts, joys and sorrows, milestones.
Well, when I went to choose a sermon from the UUA's website to read to you today, oh, is that better? Closer? Okay. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I'm going to be like this. But anyway, I was looking for something to do with Father's Day, and I didn't really find that. But this piece is a lot about children, our children, and youth, and families, and church families. So I thought it was appropriate for Father's Day, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. Now, having said that, she does talk about a couple of Bible verses in here, a couple of Bible stories. And I wasn't really super familiar with them, or probably had just forgotten them. But I thought before I get into the sermon part of it, I'm going to read you these Bible verses so that you understand, so that you remember the story of Sarah and Abraham and Hagar. The first part is from Genesis 16. And this is strange because at least in my Bible, there's in this particular verse, they're called Sarai and Abram. And 4 verses later, they're called Sarah and Abraham. So I don't know. But here we go, Genesis 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, "Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my maid." It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my maid to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. The maid fled. And then Genesis 21. Here the names are changed to Sarah and Abraham. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age. He was 100. Yeah. Abraham called the name of his son Isaac, and the child grew and was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the lad and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your descendants be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. And Hagar's son was Ishmael. So those are the Bible verses that she references in this sermon. This is written by Marjorie Bowen-Wheatley, who is a Black woman and a minister somewhere. This is a little bit dated, but unfortunately, it's still really relevant to us today. Her words, when I was studying for the ministry, one of the expectations was that each week the entire community would attend chapel, the worship service. Although I had been a Unitarian Universalist for more than a decade, I was still healing from the pain of my fundamentalist past. And I had not yet mustered the courage to attend chapel in this United Methodist seminary. But with the support of 3 Unitarian Universalist friends, one Friday toward the end of the first semester, I dragged myself to worship. I wasn't sure what kind of message I would hear, but it was a week before exams, and I hoped for a place where I could center myself and find some internal spiritual resources for the days ahead. To my surprise, there was no sermon. It was early December, and the entire liturgy focused on Advent, ending with a celebration of the Eucharist. Now, I had not attended a Christian communion for over 20 years, but I tried to approach it with an open mind. The prayer offered by Dr. Mark Burrows began with these words, we who are the children of Abraham and Sarah. I don't recall the rest of the sentence because in a split second, my mind went blank. It simply refused to be present to this experience that was sacred for most others in attendance. I began to weep quietly at first, but a whimper soon turned to tears, then uncontrollable tears. My friends sat beside me trying to be supportive, but didn't have a clue what was so upsetting about that simple phrase, we who are the children of Abraham and Sarah. I had no harsh feelings toward Dr. Burrows, but the moment I heard those words suggesting that I was a descendant of Abraham and Sarah, I felt the pain of exclusion. My rational mind told me that I should not take it literally, that the statement was merely a symbolic reference to our Jewish and Christian heritage, but that rationale didn't help. I simply could not get beyond the complex dynamics of race and class and gender in the biblical story. I knew the story of Abraham and Sarah in the book of Genesis, but I also knew the story of Abraham and Hagar, an Egyptian woman whose ethnicity and social standing made her an outcast in ancient Israel. a stranger in a strange land. As a woman of African heritage, I identified myself as one of Hagar's children. And I wondered why she had not been mentioned in the prayer. Was she not worthy of mention because she was a slave? According to the story, when Hagar's son Ishmael was about 14 years old, Sarah became jealous. Hagar had sacrificed her body and her beauty. She had postponed her life in order to give this elderly couple the gift of a child. And yet Sarah was jealous. Here were two brothers, Ishmael and Isaac, whose childhood play was no doubt innocent of any social or economic distinctions. And yet Sarah's worry about inheritance spawned her jealousy, which led to a crisis in the household. In the end, Sarah threw Hagar and Ishmael out of the house, banished them to the wilderness with no food and only a half-gallon of water. Two brothers were forced apart because of a fight between their parents. Reason is not at the top of the youth agenda, but love is. Brokenness in the family, brokenness in our communities, brokenness in our world. It is an old story, one we know well. When family and social discord disrupts and threatens life, it is more than a social problem. It is a religious problem, one that calls people of faith to respond. Born of the Enlightenment movement with its abiding faith in the power of human reason, many liberals are at a loss to understand or explain postmodern phenomena such as the violence our nation has witnessed in public schools in the past few years. School violence in Black, Latinx, and urban areas is an old problem. But until the tragedy at Columbine High School, it seemed that parts of this nation were asleep. Only when schoolyards in white suburban areas became graveyards did people wake up. Following the shootings in Paducah, Kentucky, Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, Jonesboro, Arkansas, Springfield, Oregon, Littleton, Colorado, and most recently in Santee, California, and Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I don't remember when those happened, but I know it wasn't recently. We have now begun to acknowledge that there is a deep crisis in our nation. When it comes to our children, love is the answer, no matter what the question. We ask, what is happening in our schools? Why is there so much violence? But the real question is, what is happening in our society? In a way, it defies reason. Reason, I suspect, is not at the top of the youth agenda today, but love is. In a fast-paced world in which many young people are not self-differentiated, but defined by the culture as consumers, that is, you are what you have or who you hang out with, our children are calling us. In a world of busyness that leaves little time for families to be together, children are crying out for love. In a world with blended families, step families, surrogate families, families with little cohesion, it would not be surprising if many of our children feel confused, unsupported, or experience a loss of identity. One expert put it this way: children who make the decision to kill or feel it forced upon them do so because they are already emotionally armed and dangerous. Finding a weapon to express their rage is secondary to the primary fact of their being emotional time bombs. Scary words. In a recent television interview, James Shaw, a writer who interviewed youth who are incarcerated for violent crimes, explained that violence is often centered around family issues, such as a sense of alienation and isolation, chronic feelings of being unloved, unloving, unlovable, a desperate sense of feeling worthless, not knowing how to handle constant bullying, not having fixed or positive role models among the adults in their lives, easy access to drugs, including alcohol. Just as I suspect both Isaac and Ishmael might have felt after the breakup of their household, our children are desperately crying out for answers. The answer, I believe, is deceptively simple. When it comes to our children, love is the answer, no matter what the question. We answer all their questions to the extent that we support, love, nurture, and care for our children. As a nation, we are in a deep cultural depression as well as a spiritual crisis. Of course, we need to do something about the availability of handguns. Of course, media violence has an influence, and we adults bear a responsibility for curbing both. That goes without saying, but this is not a problem from which we adults can exempt ourselves. We cannot simply blame the youth or youth culture, for we are they. They are our children, they come from our homes. Cornel West described the problem with one of those big words, nihilism, which simply means profound alienation that expresses itself in destructive ways. West says that nihilism is a monumental eclipse of hope and an unprecedented collapse of meaning. Or to say it another way, it is the lived experience of coping with a life of horrifying meaninglessness, hopelessness, and most important, lovelessness. Lovelessness. We look for explanations. We blame school violence on the availability of guns. Certainly that is a problem, but if all the guns were taken out of circulation, it would not stop the proclivity to some form of violence towards others. We blame it on violence in the media, television, films, video games, and violent lyrics in popular music. This too is part of the problem, but it is time to see the picture from a wider lens. When Cain killed his brother Abel in the biblical story, one of the first recorded stories of family violence, modern mass media was not there to tempt him. He did not replicate a murder he saw on television or learn how to make a formula for death that he found on the internet. Our youth cannot make it alone. They need our love. They need to feel our arms around them wherever they may be. As a nation, we are in a deep cultural depression as well as a spiritual crisis. What is not said very much by people in the helping professions, like social critics, preachers, sociologists, teachers, or others who come into intimate contact with youth, is that there is a crisis of the spirit, a crisis of faith in our society. And here I'm not referring to any particular religion, but to faith in the self, faith in something higher than the self, and faith in one's family and community. Alienation or nihilism is not overcome by analysis or by programs, but by love and compassion. I believe the emotional distancing we often see in youth can be subdued by the love ethic, not expressed sentimentally, but by valuing what young people have to say, by encouraging their participation in the things that most deeply affect their lives. We are not here not to act as if we are brothers and sisters, but to remember that we really are brothers and sisters, whose very reason for being is to love and care for one another. Let us recall the story of Hagar and Ishmael, where we left off, a family in crisis, a woman and her son alone out in the wilderness, homeless, no crisis hotline, no overnight shelter, no abuse counselor. She needed someone to hear her story, someone to help her figure things out, where she was going to live, how she was going to feed herself and her son. But there was no pastor, no prophet, no priest, no lay minister to help her figure it all out. According to the story, in the depths of her despair, an angel appeared at Hagar's side and asked, "Where are you coming from and where are you going?" That, my friends, is a question we need to ask not only of our children and youth, but of parents and families as well. Where are you coming from and where are you going? Families are complicated. Like Hagar and Ishmael, too many of our children and families are out in the wilderness. Even though youth may show up in the classroom day after day, teachers and administrators never know what they may be facing in their families or communities. Our youth cannot make it alone. They need our love. They need to feel our arms around them wherever they may be. And they need a church that can help them to know that they are loved, they are not alone, they have infinite worth, they are connected to all of us and to all of life, and they can make a difference, and that there is a joy in doing so. Some say that the angel appearing at Hagar's side was the voice of God. Others say that it was the still, small voice within. I like to think of it as love's call, asking her to reflect not only on her dilemma, but on who she was and what she was doing with her life. Love calls out to us as well, asking us to remember who we are, that we are spiritual beings connected to something larger and more trustworthy than ourselves. The transcendent mystery and wonder of the universe asks us to call into existence that which has been forgotten, that we are not here to act as if we are brothers and sisters, but to remember that we really are brothers and sisters whose very reason for being is to love and care for one another. This is the purpose of the church. It says, we just sang the children out. We just sang the children out to their classes, but collectively, do you know them by name? Still a good question. Do you have any idea what is on their minds? If only we could commit ourselves to do the internal work necessary with children, youth, adults, and families to recover and integrate the lost parts of ourselves, to find the silences that lead to kids bullying kids, which leads to distancing, which leads to alienation, which leads to hopelessness and despair. If only we could recover those parts of the self that have been fragmented or suppressed, if only we could be more hospitable to each other. Maybe being more hospitable to each other is building on the dream. This is the work of the soul. Soul work is hard work, but it must be done if we are to be fully alive. One thing that makes it difficult is that it is transcendent. We must move beyond ourselves to the place of empathy and compassion, to the place of hospitality of the human spirit. This is what counters alienation, nihilism, and brokenness in the human family. Soul work, compassion, hospitality. It is the work of the church. It is the work of our salvation. It is what ministry is, to save souls through hospitality of the human spirit. So may it be. And now I think we're going to sing my favorite song in our hymnal, Spirit of Life, number 123. Our benediction this morning was written by Harold Babcock. And now may we go forth in the certainty of faith, in the knowledge of love, and in the vision of hope. And in our going, may be blessed with all good things on this day and forevermore. Go in peace.